I had always believed that life in New York City was a series of random yet meaningful encounters. Little did I know that attending a literary event on a chilly November evening would lead to the most significant encounter of my life. As I stepped into the grand hall of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, my eyes were drawn to the shimmering chandeliers and the murmur of intellectual conversation. I felt a thrill of excitement. This was my element. Surrounded by fellow writers, publishers, and literary enthusiasts, I felt a sense of belonging. I scanned the room, searching for familiar faces. That's when I saw him. Standing by the grand staircase was a man with an air of confidence and mystery. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his dark hair slightly tousled. There was something about his presence that captivated me instantly. Before I knew it, I was being introduced to him. "Ella, this is David Evans," said one of my colleagues. "David, this is Ella Hart, a rising star in the literary world." David turned to me with a charming smile. "Ella Hart, I've heard a lot about you," he said, his voice smooth and inviting. "All good, I hope," I replied, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. "Absolutely," he said, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Your work is remarkable." We started talking, and I was amazed at how effortlessly the conversation flowed. David was not only well-read, but also had a keen understanding of the world. We discussed literature, travel, and our ambitions. There was an undeniable chemistry between us, a connection that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As the evening progressed, I found myself drawn to David more and more. He had a way of making me feel like the most important person in the room. His stories about his travels and business ventures were fascinating, though I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something he wasn't telling me. Lily, my best friend and confidant, noticed the spark between us. "Be careful, Ella," she whispered to me when David stepped away to get us drinks. "He seems too good to be true." I brushed off her concerns with a smile. "Don't worry, Lily. I know what I'm doing." But deep down, I knew she had a point. There was an air of mystery around David, and I couldn't deny the inconsistencies in his stories. Still, I was smitten, and I wasn't ready to let go of the possibility of something extraordinary. As the event drew to a close, David walked me to the door. "I'd love to see you again, Ella," he said, taking my hand in his. "I'd like that," I replied, my heart racing. He leaned in and kissed my cheek, a gesture that felt both intimate and promising. "I'll call you," he said before disappearing into the night. Over the next few weeks, David and I started seeing each other regularly. Our dates were magical, filled with laughter, deep conversations, and stolen glances. He was often away on business trips, but when he was in town, he made sure every moment we spent together was special. Despite his frequent absences, I felt like I was falling for David. He had a way of making me feel cherished and adored. However, the nagging doubts about his mysterious work and travels continued to linger. Paul, my supportive older brother, shared Lily's concerns. "Ella, have you ever wondered why he's so secretive about his work?" he asked one evening over dinner. "I have, but I believe him," I said, more to convince myself than Paul. Paul sighed. "Just be careful, sis. I don't want to see you get hurt." Their worries couldn't dampen my feelings for David. I was in too deep, too enchanted by the man who had captured my heart. One night, as we lay under the stars in Central Park, David turned to me and said, "Ella, I want you to know that you mean the world to me." "And you mean the world to me," I replied, my heart full of hope. But in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered that love should not be built on secrets. Little did I know that this was only the beginning of a journey filled with love, heartbreak, and self-discovery. The weeks turned into months, and my relationship with David deepened. Each encounter with him was a whirlwind of passion and romance. He knew how to make me feel special, and I reveled in the attention. He took me to the most exquisite restaurants, surprised me with flowers, and even helped me find inspiration for my writing. My life felt like a dream, one that I didn't want to wake from. One evening, David invited me to a lavish gala. It was an event for high-profile business people and philanthropists, and I felt a bit out of place among the wealthy elite. David, however, was in his element. He introduced me to several influential people, always by my side, making me feel like I belonged. As we mingled with the guests, I noticed a woman staring at us from across the room. She was strikingly beautiful, With a poised demeanor that suggested she was someone important, she caught my eye and smiled politely before turning away. "Who was that?" I asked David, curious about the woman who seemed to know him. David glanced over and shrugged. "Just someone I know from the business world. No one important." His nonchalant response didn't quite satisfy me, but I let it go. After all, it was a night to enjoy, not to question. Yet, the woman's face lingered in my mind, a small seed of doubt taking root. As our relationship progressed, I started to notice more inconsistencies. David's frequent travels became more mysterious. He often avoided direct answers about where he was going or what he was doing. Whenever I asked, he would change the subject or give vague explanations. Despite these red flags, I chose to trust him, convincing myself that love required a leap of faith. One evening, as I was working on my latest novel, Lily dropped by for a visit. She had always been my rock, the one who grounded me when I floated too high on clouds of optimism. "Ella, you seem distracted," she observed, her sharp eyes missing nothing. I sighed, putting down my pen. "It's David. He's away so often, and sometimes I can't help but wonder if he's hiding something." Lily's expression softened. "Ella, I know you love him, but you deserve someone who is fully present in your life. Have you tried talking to him about how you feel?" "I have, but he always assures me that everything is fine, that his work just demands a lot of his time." "I want to believe him, Lily. I really do." She took my hand in hers. "Just remember, you deserve honesty and transparency. Don't lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who isn't fully there." Lily's words echoed in my mind long after she left. That night, I decided I needed to know more about David's life. It wasn't about distrust. It was about clarity and understanding the man I was falling in love with. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. David had left his laptop open on my kitchen table while he went to take a phone call. Curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself glancing at the screen. An email caught my eye, one from a name I recognized, Grace Evans. The email was brief, mentioning a family event and how they needed to present a united front. My heart raced as I read and reread the message. David had always told me he and Grace were separated, but this sounded far more complicated. When David returned, I couldn't hide my distress. "David, can we talk?" He looked at me, concerned. "Of course, Ella. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "I saw an email from Grace. It mentioned something about a family event. David, I thought you said you were separated." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Ella, I am separated from Grace, but we still have some obligations together, especially when it comes to family events. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" I pressed, needing more than just vague assurances. "Grace and I have been trying to keep things amicable for the sake of our families." "It's not what it seems, Ella. I promise you that." His explanation was plausible, but the seed of doubt had already sprouted. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to the story. Despite the growing doubts, I continued to see David. Our moments together were still magical, but the shadows of uncertainty loomed over us. My writing, however, began to flourish. The emotions and turmoil I felt provided a rich source of inspiration. My latest novel, a love story tinged with betrayal, was shaping up to be my best work yet. Paul, ever the protective brother, visited me one afternoon. "Ella, I can see you're struggling. You don't have to go through this alone." I hugged him tightly, grateful for his unwavering support. "Thanks, Paul. I'm just trying to navigate this relationship the best I can." "Just remember, we're here for you," he said, his voice filled with brotherly concern. "You deserve someone who is fully committed to you." As I watched him leave, I made a silent promise to myself. I would find out the truth about David, no matter what. Love should not be built on secrets and half-truths. It was time to take control of my story. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. David's absences grew longer and his explanations vaguer. The seed of doubt had now grown into a gnawing anxiety that I could no longer ignore. I needed clarity, and I needed it soon. One Friday evening, as I was preparing for yet another lonely weekend, my phone buzzed. It was David. "Hey, Ella, I'm sorry, but I won't be able to make it this weekend. An urgent business matter has come up," he said, his voice laced with regret. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my disappointment in check. "It's okay, David. I understand. I hope everything's all right." Everything's fine, just hectic. I'll make it up to you, I promise, he reassured me. After we hung up, I decided I couldn't sit idly by any longer. I called Lily, needing her unwavering support. Lily, I need your help, I said, my voice trembling with determination. Anything, Ella. What's going on? I need to find out the truth about David. I can't keep living in this uncertainty. Lily agreed to help, and we decided to do some discreet investigating. We started by searching for any public information about David and his business. We found some basic details about his company, but nothing that could explain his frequent absences or his mysterious behavior. Feeling a bit desperate, we decided to dig deeper. Lily suggested we try to find out more about Grace, the woman who seemed to be at the center of David's secrets. We found her social media profiles and began piecing together fragments of her life. It was clear that she was still very much involved with David, far more than he had led me to believe. One post in particular caught our attention. Grace had shared a photo from a recent family event, and there, standing beside her, was David. They looked happy, like a perfect couple. My heart sank. This wasn't the picture of a separated couple. It was the picture of a united family. Determined to confront David, I decided to surprise him on his next business trip. I booked a flight to London, where he had said he would be for the weekend. Lily was hesitant, but supported my decision, knowing that I needed answers. When I arrived in London, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I went to the hotel where David was supposedly staying and waited in the lobby. Hours passed, and there was no sign of him. Just as I was about to give up, I saw him walking in, arm in arm with Grace. My heart shattered. All the doubts and suspicions I had tried to suppress came crashing down. I approached them, my hands trembling. "David," I called out, my voice betraying the pain I felt. He turned, his face paling as he saw me. "Ella, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice breaking. "You told me you were separated. You lied to me." Grace looked at me, then at David, confusion and realization dawning on her face. "David, who is this?" David struggled to find his words. "Grace, this is Ella. She's a friend." "A friend?" I echoed, feeling the full weight of his betrayal. "Is that all I am to you?" Grace's expression hardened. "David, what's going on?" David finally sighed, the facade crumbling. "Ella, Grace, I owe you both the truth. I never planned for this to happen. Grace and I have been trying to keep things together for the sake of our families, but I've made mistakes, big ones." Grace looked at him with a mixture of anger and hurt. "David, you lied to both of us." I felt tears streaming down my face. "I trusted you, David. I loved you." He reached out to me, but I stepped back. "Ella, please, let me explain." "There's nothing left to explain," I said, my voice hollow. "Goodbye, David." I turned and walked away, leaving David and Grace to sort out their own mess. The pain was overwhelming, but I knew I had made the right choice. I couldn't be with someone who had built our relationship on lies. Back in New York, I threw myself into my work, using the heartbreak as fuel for my writing. My latest novel, now a poignant tale of love and betrayal, began to take shape. The process was cathartic, helping me to process my emotions and find strength in my pain. Paul and Lily were my pillars of support, always there to remind me that I deserved better. Slowly, I began to heal, finding solace in the words I wrote and the people who loved me unconditionally. The first revelation had shattered my illusions, but it also set me on a path to self-discovery and resilience. I had loved and lost, but I had also learned that my worth was not defined by someone else's actions. I was ready to reclaim my story and write the next chapter of my life on my own terms. The months following my confrontation with David were a blend of sorrow and renewal. My writing became my sanctuary, a place where I could channel my heartache into creativity. My novel, which had started as a love story, evolved into a powerful narrative of betrayal and self-discovery. The process was painful yet liberating, and it wasn't long before I began to see the fruits of my labor. One crisp autumn morning, I received an email from my publisher. They were thrilled with my latest manuscript and wanted to fast-track its release. It was the kind of news that every writer dreams of, and for a moment, the weight of my heartbreak lifted. I shared the news with Lily and Paul, who were ecstatic. "Ella, this is amazing. You deserve this so much," Lily said, hugging me tightly. Paul nodded, his eyes filled with pride. You've turned something painful into something beautiful, Ella. We're so proud of you. Despite the positive turn in my professional life, there were still moments when thoughts of David haunted me. I wondered how he and Grace were handling things, whether they had managed to sort out their relationship or if they had gone their separate ways. One evening, as I was packing up my office, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from David. "Can we talk? I need to see you." My heart skipped a beat. Part of me wanted to ignore the message, to continue moving forward without looking back. But another part of me, the part that still held on to the remnants of our time together, needed closure. I agreed to meet him at a quiet café, a place where we had shared many happy moments. When I arrived, I saw him sitting at a corner table, looking more disheveled than I had ever seen him. He stood up as I approached, his eyes filled with regret. "Ella, thank you for coming," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. I sat down, folding my hands on the table. "What do you want to talk about, David?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've lost everything, Ella. Grace left me, my business is in shambles, and I've realized just how much I've hurt you." I listened, feeling a mix of sympathy and anger. "David, you lied to me. You made me believe in a future that was never real." "I know, and I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I was selfish and cowardly. I didn't deserve you or Grace." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sadness for the man I had once loved. But I also felt a sense of strength, a recognition of my own resilience. "David, I'm glad you're taking responsibility for your actions, but I can't go back. I need to move forward with my life without you." He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "I understand. I just needed to apologize and let you know how much I regret everything." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our shared past heavy between us. Eventually, I stood up, ready to leave the past behind. "Goodbye, David," I said, my voice firm. "Goodbye, Ella," he replied, watching me walk away. As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter with David was finally over, and I was ready to embrace the future. A few weeks later, my novel was released. The reception was overwhelmingly positive, with critics praising its raw emotion and powerful storytelling. I felt a sense of accomplishment that I hadn't felt in a long time. One afternoon, as I was signing copies of my book at a local bookstore, I received an unexpected visitor. Grace stood in front of my table, holding a copy of my novel. "Grace," I said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" She smiled faintly. "I read your book. It's incredible, Ella. I wanted to thank you for writing it." "Thank me?" I asked, puzzled. She nodded, her expression sincere. "Your story helped me realize that I deserve better too. I've decided to leave David for good and start a new life." I felt a rush of empathy for her. "Grace, I'm so sorry for everything you went through." "Thank you, Ella, but I'm also grateful. Your book gave me the strength to make a change." We talked for a while, sharing our experiences and the lessons we had learned. It was a healing conversation, one that brought a sense of closure and mutual respect. As Grace left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had turned my pain into art, and in doing so, I had not only healed myself but also inspired others. David's second betrayal had taught me a valuable lesson. Love should be built on honesty and mutual respect. Anything less was not worth the pain. I was ready to move forward, to embrace new opportunities and new love, with a heart that was stronger and wiser. With my novel's success, doors began to open for me. Invitations to literary events, speaking engagements, and interviews flooded in. I was finally living my dream, and it felt empowering. However, I knew that my journey was not just about professional success, it was also about personal growth and healing. Lily and Paul remained my steadfast supporters, always there to remind me of how far I had come. One evening, as we celebrated the release of my book, Lily raised her glass. "To Ella, the strongest person I know. You've turned your heartbreak into something beautiful, and I'm so proud of you." Paul nodded, clinking his glass against mine. "Here's to new beginnings and the amazing future ahead." Their words warmed my heart, and I realized how lucky I was to have such supportive people in my life. They had been there through my darkest moments, and now they were here to celebrate my triumphs. As the weeks passed, I continued to write, finding solace in my words. My experiences with David had taught me the importance of self-love and resilience. I had learned to trust myself, to value my worth, and to never settle for anything less than I deserved. One sunny afternoon, as I was working in my favorite café, I received an unexpected message. It was from a literary agent who had read my novel and was interested in representing me for future projects. Excited and a bit nervous, I arranged a meeting with her. The meeting went exceptionally well. The agent, Sarah, was not only impressed with my work, but also deeply understood my voice and vision as a writer. We decided to work together, and I felt a new chapter of my life beginning. With Sarah's guidance, I began to explore new themes and genres in my writing. My second book, a collection of short stories about love and resilience, began to take shape. Writing these stories was a cathartic process, allowing me to delve deeper into my own experiences and emotions. As I immersed myself in my work, I also started to open my heart to the possibility of new love. I realized that my journey wasn't about finding someone to complete me, but about sharing my life with someone who respected and cherished me. One evening at a literary event, I met a man named Alex. He was a fellow writer with a passion for storytelling and a kind, genuine demeanor. We struck up a conversation, and I was immediately drawn to his warmth and authenticity. Over the next few weeks, Alex and I began to spend more time together. Our connection was different from what I had experienced with David. With Alex, there were no secrets, no hidden agendas. He was open and honest, and I felt a sense of safety and trust that I hadn't felt in a long time. As our relationship blossomed, I realized that I had finally found someone who valued me for who I was, not for what I could offer. Alex became my partner and my confidant, supporting me in my writing and celebrating my successes. Reflecting on my journey, I saw how far I had come. The pain and betrayal I had experienced with David had been transformative, leading me to a place of strength and self-awareness. I had learned to trust my instincts, to value my worth, and to never compromise on my happiness. One evening, as Alex and I sat together, watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of contentment. I had turned my heartbreak into a source of strength, and in doing so, I had found love and fulfillment. "Ella," Alex said, taking my hand, "I'm so grateful to have you in my life. You inspire me every day." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Thank you, Alex. I'm grateful for you too. You've shown me what true love and partnership are." As we watched the sun dip below the horizon, I knew that my journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more stories to tell, and more moments of joy and sorrow. But I was ready, armed with the lessons I had learned and the love I had found. My path to healing had led me to a place of strength and resilience. I had fallen for someone who never came home, but in the process, I had come home to myself. And that was the greatest love story of all.